Welcome to the deep dive. We're plunging into a really complex story today, the world of AI chips.
Yeah, these tiny components, they're not just driving AI.
No, they've become this sort of silent battleground, haven't they, for global power, national security.
Economic dominance, exactly. It's
Yeah.
like high-stakes chess game.
On a microchip scale.
Right. So our mission here is to unpack that whole mix, the tech, the economics, the geopolitics shaping this vital semiconductor industry.
We want to help you understand what's really going on.
Yeah, what it means for AI's future,
Mm.
for companies like Nvidia, and, well, for you.
And to do that, we've got a great set of sources lined up. We're looking at Dr. Robert Castellano's Semiconductor Deep Dive newsletter,
KPMG's Global Semiconductor Industry Outlook for 2025.
plus news analysis from places like A-Invest, Bloomberg, Finance Magnates, CBS, CNBC, Yahoo Finance, Motley Fool.
And the Wall Street Journal, of course.
Yeah.
And we're even digging into some pretty interesting Reddit discussions.
Right, some really insightful takes there sometimes.
Definitely. So we're starting with that Wall Street Journal piece. Nvidia China troubles aren't over.
Yeah, looking at Nvidia's market in China, the impact on their, massive market value.
And then we'll pivot to those Reddit threads about Nvidia's CEO, Jensen Huang.
Exploring how his leadership, maybe even his background, plays into this whole dynamic.
Exactly. It's a fascinating layer to this whole story.
Okay, so let's jump right in with that core tension from the WSJ article. The U.S. has sanctions, right, aimed at limiting China's access to advanced AI.
Right.
But NVIDIA still holds this, dominant position there. How does that work?
It's pretty incredible, isn't it? I mean, in 2023, Nvidia had a 78% market share in China's AI chip market.
78%, despite the sanctions.
Yeah, almost 8 out of 10 AI chips. That translated to $13.26 billion in revenue just from China that year.
Wow.
And this market is just exploding. It went from $9 billion in 2021 to $17 billion in 2023.
Huge growth.
And projections, they're talking $62.5 billion by 2028. China could be over 30% of global AI chip revenues by 2025.
So it's a market you just can't ignore if you're in AI chips.
Absolutely indispensable.
Okay, let's just quickly unpack this for listeners. Why did the U.S. bring in these sanctions, especially around 2022? What was the main goal?
Well, the primary objective was pretty straightforward. Stop China using cutting-edge AI for military advancement.
Okay, military applications.
Specifically things like advanced nuclear and conventional weapons systems. The idea was to cut off access to the most powerful computing tools needed for that kind of development.
So it forced NVIDIA's hand.
It did. Initially, Nvidia had to create these nerfed versions, performance-reduced GPUs, like the H20 chip.
Right, the compliant chips.
Exactly. Engineered to be just below the U.S. export control limits. So
Yeah.
they could still sell something to China while, trying to limit the military potential.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting then. You put up these barriers. How did China react? How did their companies adapt so fast?
Oh, they found some, let's say, ingenious workarounds.
Like what?
Well, for instance, lots of Chinese firms started using cloud platforms.
Mhm.
Even U.S.-based ones like Amazon Web Services, AWS,
To do what?
to remotely access NVIDIA's top chips,
Yeah.
the A100s, the H100s, the very ones banned for physical import.
Ah, so they rented the power instead of buying the hardware? Clever.
Exactly. They bypassed the physical bans. But here's the kicker.
Yeah.
That move, that adaptation, it kind of inadvertently lit a fire under China's own push for domestic chip innovation,
Wow.
self-reliance.
Right, the classic unintended consequence.
Totally. By cutting off access to the best, the U.S. basically pushed China to accelerate its own semiconductor development, like their own Apollo program for chips.
And we're seeing results.
We really are. Look at Huawei's Ascend 910C chip.
Mhm.
It's a direct competitor to NVIDIA's H100.
Really? Competitive.
Seems like it. Chinese tech giants have already ordered over 70,000 of them. It's about $2 billion worth.
Wow.
And it's not just Huawei. You've got Alibaba's Moki, Huawei's Kunpeng. There's a serious state-backed drive for self-sufficiency happening.
That is such a critical point. The policy aimed at restriction actually speeds up the competition.
Yeah, a real strategic twist on the chessboard.
And all this puts NVIDIA in a really precarious spot, doesn't it? What's been the financial fallout for them?
Oh, the financial hit's been significant, no doubt. China is what, 13% of their fiscal 2025 revenue?
That's huge, over $17 billion.
Exactly, not pocket change. And they've reported $5.5 billion in inventory write-downs since early 2025.
Meaning chips they couldn't sell as planned?
Pretty much, plus a $700 million hit to Q1 earnings directly linked to the China situation. Analysts were even talking about potential $9 billion annualized losses if things didn't change.
And Nvidia warned about Q2, right?
They did, a
Eh,
potential $8 billion hit, and you saw their market share in China just plummet from like 95% down to 50%.
Ouch. Okay, so with those kinds of numbers, how does a company like Nvidia and specifically CEO Jensen Huang navigate this mess?
Well, their adaptation has been incredibly agile. It's kind of a masterclass in corporate diplomacy and fast
Yep.
engineering.
Oh.
They move super quickly to develop and release those compliant chips. First the H20, now the newer B30, based on their latest Blackwell architecture.
And that's selling.
Apparently so. The B30 generated $13.5 billion in revenue in Q2 2025 alone. Shipments jumped 300% quarter over quarter.
That's a strong comeback.
It is. But as you mentioned, Jensen Huang's personal role seems absolutely pivotal here.
Right, the CEO involvement.
He's been actively lobbying, making multiple trips to Beijing, talking directly with U.S. policymakers, even President Trump.
A lot of high-level effort.
Relentless effort.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's paid off, at least for now.
Yeah, because we saw that policy reversal recently. The U.S. gave Nvidia the green light to resume H20 sales to China
That's the report.
after banning them just months before.
Yeah.
That feels like a big shift. What allowed that?
It is a big shift.
Yeah.
Reports suggest the U.S. government basically assured Nvidia licenses would be granted for these compliant chips.
Why the change of heart, though?
Well, it seems to align with maybe a broader slight thawing in trade tensions. We've seen U.S. and Chinese officials meeting on export controls, and China apparently eased up on rare earth supplies recently. So it suggests maybe a more nuanced approach is emerging, perhaps.
Interesting. And what's Jensen Huang's core argument to U.S. officials? What's his pitch to Washington to allow these sales?
His argument is really pragmatic, and it hits on a couple of levels. He basically says letting Nvidia sell these compliant chips isn't a national security threat,
Okay.
but it is an economic necessity for the U.S. to stay ahead in the AI race. He points out, look, about half the world's AI researchers are in China.
Right.
If U.S. firms are totally cut off, those researchers just turn to Chinese chips, right? That speeds up China's independence and leaves U.S. tech behind in a huge market.
Makes sense economically.
And he also makes this really blunt point.
Uh-huh.
The Chinese military isn't going to rely on American chips for its most critical stuff anyway, because they know U.S. access could just be switched off anytime. They'll always want domestic supply for truly strategic systems. So Huang argues the bans don't really stop that, but they do hurt the U.S. economy and its influence.
That's a compelling economic argument. Focus on U.S. competitiveness. But it does raise that tricky question about dual use, doesn't it? And the smuggling concerns we hear about in Congress.
Exactly.
Can the U.S. really control where these chips end up, even the compliant ones, once they're sold in China? How does Huang's argument square with that?
That's the absolute core tension. It's the toughest challenge for policymakers. A powerful chip can be used for, industrial stuff and military stuff.
The line is blurry.
Very blurry. So enforcement is incredibly hard. You hear senators worried about meetings with Chinese firms, maybe linked to the military, reports of smuggling rings.
Sure.
Once a chip is out there, how do you really track its end use? Are we expecting Nvidia to police the world? Or is it fundamentally a geopolitical trust issue?
And probably beyond any single company's control.
Likely. And layered on top of that, you've still got China's unwavering goal, technological independence. Beijing keeps pouring money into homegrown chips like Huawei's Ascend.
So even with Nvidia getting access again.
China's still pushing hard for self-sufficiency. They don't want to be dependent long-term.
Okay, so it's clearly a volatile environment. Given all this turbulence, what's the general mood in the broader semiconductor industry? What does that KPMG outlook for 2025 say?
Surprisingly, despite all these headwinds, the outlook for 2025 is remarkably optimistic.
Really?
Yeah. KPMG found 86% of semiconductor execs expect their own company's revenue to grow next year, and 92% expect the overall industry revenue to grow.
Wow, that's bullish. What's driving that optimism?
Well, for the first time ever in these surveys, AI is ranked as the #1 most important application driving revenue,
Ahead of everything else.
ahead of cloud computing, data centers, even ahead of automotive, which topped the list for the last 2 years but fell to 4th. AI is king now, it seems. The microprocessors, including GPUs, are still the top product opportunity.
And they're backing this up with investment.
They are. 72% plan to boost R&D spending. 63% plan to increase capital spending. So yeah, they're putting money behind that optimism.
Okay, but despite the rosy financial outlook, what are the biggest challenges or worries for the industry going into 2025? What are the pain points?
According to KPMG, The top two issues are tied for first place.
Which are?
Talent risk, that's the shortage of skilled workers, always an issue in tech and territorialism.
So the geopolitics, tariffs, protectionism.
Exactly. That U.S.-China rivalry is definitely a top-of-mind concern. And linked to that, supply chain disruption is also a growing worry.
So how are they coping?
Companies are prioritizing supply chain flexibility, trying to diversify geographically, not put all their eggs in one basket. And they're focusing heavily on talent development and retention.
Makes sense. And what about day-to-day operations, like inventory? Are they stockpiling chips just in case or being more cautious?
It seems they're shifting towards reducing inventory, moving away from that just in case we saw post-pandemic, maybe more towards just in time.
Why the shift?
Likely due to economic uncertainty and maybe unpredictable demand patterns. Views are still a bit mixed, though. About 29% think there's already an inventory excess out there,
Okay.
while 25% are more optimistic, thinking demand from AI and other tech will soak up supply.
And are these companies using AI themselves to manage this complexity?
They are. Generative AI is already being used in IT and R&D, and there are plans to expand it into supply chain management, marketing, sales.
Mm-hmm.
So they're definitely adopting the tech internally, too.
It's just fascinating, though, coming back to Jensen Huang. His personal role in all this, navigating Washington, Beijing, it's pretty unique.
It really is.
How is his identity, his engagement with both sides perceived in this whole high-stakes game?
Yeah, he's often described as threading a needle, right? Performing this really intricate dance between the two capitals to keep that market access.
Those trips to Beijing, appearing on state TV, that's unusual.
Highly unusual for a foreign tech CEO. He even has that Chinese nickname, Leather Jacket. Suggests some level of recognition, maybe even popularity there.
And what about the view from, say, those Reddit discussions you mentioned?
Well, they reflect really different, sometimes polarized views. Some argue his engagement helps U.S. tech leadership, keeps Nvidia competitive globally.
And the other side?
Others worry it sort of enables China's tech independence, maybe undermines U.S. security goals. It's like a real debate.
Is his background, his heritage, part of that discussion?
It comes up. There was one really insightful comment on Reddit suggesting he's treated with respect by the CCP not because he's Chinese, wow, Taiwanese actually, but because he's American.
Framing it as about U.S. corporate power.
Exactly. That his influence stems from leading a massive U.S. company, Nvidia, more than his personal background alone. It really highlights that complex mix of corporate clout, national identity, and geopolitics.
So, looking at the whole picture, the sanctions, the workarounds, the financial hits, this sort of fragile policy reversal, is this a permanent shift, do you think? Or just a temporary pause in the tech Cold War?
Oh, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's really hard to say for sure.
But the underlying tension remains.
I think so. The tension between, corporate profit and national policy that's likely to persist, this probably isn't a final resolution. It feels more like a new chapter in a very long, ongoing story. The dance continues, maybe just with some new steps.
It's absolutely clear the AI chip market is this incredible intersection. You've got raw economic interests, cutting-edge tech, global power strategies, all colliding right there.
Yeah, it's a truly fascinating space. And NVIDIA's journey through it all, facing the sanctions, getting these conditional approvals, it just perfectly highlights that incredibly complex, really high-stakes dance between global business and national security.
So here's a final thought for you, our listeners. As companies like Nvidia adapt, making these specialized chips for specific markets,
while China simultaneously pushes for its own complete technological independence.
How might this kind of split path, this bifurcated technological development, reshape the whole global AI landscape? Could we end up with, distinct, maybe even incompatible AI ecosystems instead of one global one?
Yeah, what does a world with potentially two separate AI futures actually look like? That's something to really ponder.